You see, that's my first Django middleware. If no one has a question, we can go to another middleware. Let's go to, what is it? Let's go to this RLS middleware. So for this particular middleware, what I wanted to do with this RLS middleware, RLS stands for row level security. Row level security is, let's look at my database. And the commodity table. This is going to, I'll also come back to this later. Let me just give the thought behind it. So my idea was, let's say in all these rows, I have like 200 rows, right? And for, let's say for commodity number, ID number 136, I don't want it to be, I don't want anyone to send a request to that commodity unless they are an authenticated user. Okay, let's say, so let's say I don't want anyone to see row number 151. Let's take this for Gikomba. And number 151, I just pinned it, man. What the hell? Let's do number 50. Let's do number 50. Yeah, so row number 50, I don't want anyone to see row number 50. Once they do anyone who tries to get row number 50, they are hit with a bad request. A response of bad request. So let me implement that right now. So we have the, I'm putting this right here so that you can see. We don't need to see the logs anymore. So let me go back to the code. And yeah, so I have these RLS middleware. That is misleading. So if request.path ends with, so let me just do that, ends with number 50. We can even log this. It's already logged because remember every request is gonna be logged. So let me just print here. This was for me testing. So if a request.path ends with row number 50, so request.path gets the path for the request, and row number 50, if the runner gets it ends with that, return response status code 400, return response, and that's it. So if I come here and try to get row number 50, let me start with 49 first, so that you can see what happens to 49. You see, you can see the commodity ID number 49, which is wheat from Nakuru. And let me do row number 50. You see? Page not found, 400 bad requests. Can you all see that? Let me do it again. You can all see it's I get a bad request. Yeah, this one was pretty straightforward. Let me go to the next one. I have another redirect middleware here. I have this redirect middleware, which is this one here. Once we're done, we are also gonna deal with the ordering. Redirect middleware. Don't know what's up with this middleware. Let me just put it right here, just above here. I want you to see my logs. I don't know. Oh, yeah. It was logging an error. So this redirect middleware is, my idea behind this was, let's say we are running a production application. And at some point in production, let's give an instance of the Raja API. At some point, the Raja, they need to do, this is the worst case scenario, not just any other scenario. So at some point, the Raja, they need to do some maintenance, and they realize kuna endpoint moja, like one endpoint that has been, needs to be maintained. And for them to do the maintenance, they have to kind of turn it off, but they don't want to pull down the whole application, right? Let's say, so now for my scenario was, I don't want people to add more. I've already run out of my database memory, so I don't want anyone adding more commodities. Okay, I don't want anyone adding more commodities. So let's add a commodity first, then use this middleware. So let me just comment it again. And so these fields are required. Copy those fields. Copy body raw JSON. So I can just give the data as 2024 03001. Because I can just push all this data because the application doesn't know if the country is wrong. If there's a country called this is required or not. So I can just push all this. Supply volume. Oh, yeah. I hope you guys don't get bored.
Honestly, I doubt anyone here is bored. We already decided we don't have a life on a Friday, so this is actually quite exciting. I feel like I've been opened up to a whole new thing to play around with. So yeah, if anyone has a question so far, you can type it in the comments or just raise your hand and ask alone. Don't allow Fred to just continue when you're confused. We don't do that here.
So let me try creating a commodity. ID. How is ID required?
AI Bunny,
Yes.
Stephen is requesting you increase the font a little bit. So Stephen, you can just maybe give a thumbs up. Okay. Yeah.
I hope you can see it. So I'm trying to create a commodity right now. Okay, the commodity has been successfully created as this. this is a commodity I've created. And my scenario was assuming it's the Daraja API. And we don't, let's say the endpoint we use for sending SDK pushes, and it needs to be maintained. But Safaricom doesn't want to pull down the whole application just because one endpoint is not working. So you can just push something into the code that can just turn off that one endpoint, that one particular endpoint. So I created a middleware for such a scenario. For such a scenario, I have this middleware. You can see one right now, currently, without the middleware, I can successfully post to this endpoint called commodities. I can send a post request. So my endpoint is the middleware is defined as for if request is a post method, and the path is agree commodities. If you're trying to do a post request to, let's say, this particular endpoint, looking at an endpoint, always think of it as a view. So you want to call a particular view in the application. You return a HTTP response of a permanent redirect to another view. So I have created a view here. Let me put this here. So I've created a view here called the maintenance view. For this view, what happens is once anyone tries to post to, let me also mention something else. Look at this, agree commodities. Sometimes in Django, you realize that the part of the URL is also the name of your application. We tend to do that. So I have the application agree commodities. So we have the commodities. So because the agri commodities application is also, I created a maintenance view, which can be used at any point in the application, such as this scenario we have. We don't want anyone to post to that particular endpoint while we're maintaining your project. Or maybe we faced an issue. We don't want any post requests coming to this commodities view. I want them to be redirected to this one. Let me repeat that. Any post request coming to this class commodities view set, I want them to be redirected to this view right here. So I call this the maintenance view. And what happens is, if you send a GET request, this endpoint under maintain, it returns a message. Endpoint under maintenance, please try again later. And also a HTTP 543 service unavailable. So let's practically do that. Let me send a post request. My message is endpoint under maintenance, please try again later. So what my middleware does is, if your request path is this and your request method is a post request, it's gonna give you agreement. It's gonna redirect that request to this other endpoint. So this is just like someone in the middle who redirects your request. You initially send a request to this view, but you are redirected to another view right here. All that, then you're that. That's it. Then, look at it. I had said it's a post request. Let me just change it to a GET request. Remember, initially we were running the GET request just fine. So let's see what happens. Pretty. Message endpoint under maintenance. So yeah. So now so we've managed to put off or turn off some endpoints in our application, but other endpoints can still go on successfully. So let's say because now we made it, the GET request is the one that stand off. Also, the post can continue happening. People can still create. I hope that middleware makes sense now.
It actually makes so much sense to me. If anyone has a question, kindly don't be left behind. Feel free to ask. Yes, Kinoti.
Thank you. I have a question on that redirect middleware. How will it know that how will the application know that it is under maintenance? Because I just saw you commenting out some code.
The application doesn't know when it's under maintenance. You, the developer, know when your application is under maintenance. So that's when let's say, this is a simple scenario. We could define variables, environment variables. We say, get endpoints under maintenance, like a variable called that endpoints under maintenance. We put their paths in that variable. You could put them as comma separated and just check from the function here. If the endpoint is in that list, redirect to this. Or should I just do it? Should I do it? Yeah.
Yes,
Kinoti, have I answered your question?
Partially.
Okay. How should I answer it well? Ask the question again.
Okay, let me ask it once more. Now, the client, assuming now the application is on, it's running, and then the client hits that endpoint, and then but that endpoint is under maintenance. Yeah. How?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say like the example that used the Raj API. I think these are two APIs that you combine together. How will you know that? How will you know that that endpoint is under maintenance so that it report that error message?
This is going to limit somewhat, like, you see, in development we have CI/CD pipelines, so before we even start maintaining an endpoint, we get issues raised. People raise issues that this endpoint is not working as expected. And also, maybe you as a developer, you pushed something in production and it will break the production. So, and there's also some features you pushed that they are core to the business. If, like for Safaricom, they wouldn't want to stop operating because the idea of M-Pesa is also a business. It makes them money. So they can stop the whole application because one endpoint is not working. And how do you know if it's not working? People raise issues. Maybe developers interacting with the Daraja API, or even the developer. Sometimes you can sit down and also know if you pushed some buggy code. So that's when like, you can define the middleware before you even have the code in production, or you can even define it ad hoc. Immediately you see that this endpoint is not working as expected. Instead of you going there and Docker compose down, you just add the code, push it to GitHub, maybe Git pull it again and Docker compose build without having to turn down the whole application. I hope it makes sense. The API will never know when it's broken. You know when your API is broken.
Okay. Oh, thank you. That was my point. So it means that it's not the application that will close itself. You are the one who will go and stop that. You are the one who will go and activate that redirect middleware, not the application itself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, for that we could do this. At this point we can't do anything to our application because the middlewares take effect once a request hits your application. it does not take effect while your application is building or while your application is idle. It takes effect when a request hits your application.
Sure.
Yeah, so you're the one who's gonna know, unless ni server error. You see, even when you have server errors only show for one particular endpoint. It's just going to say 500 error, but it's for the other working endpoints, they're just gonna work perfectly. You might say, let's say for Safaricom, for Safaricom, it's a transactional database, and let's say you're expecting the application to know when it's facing errors. It's gonna show you a 500 error. Maybe you are supposed to send someone money, and the application fails halfway. If you've not defined your database transactions well, you see, you might find you are debiting a client, but you've not credited the person who the money is supposed to go to. That's if you have not defined your transactional nini perfectly, your database transactions. I hope I've answered your question.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else with a question?
I saw someone in the chats, they were asking what you're doing. They had just joined. And for those who joined later on, so we don't want to continue with you floating. So just a general overview of what we are doing is we're covering middleware today. And AI Bunny is taking us through writing custom middleware so you could have more control over your project. So right now we've covered logging middleware, how you can implement logging in your application, basically. And then now we are covering role security middleware? Yes.
Row level.
So basically,
Role
yeah,
security.
role level. Okay. Role level security middleware. So he was just sending a get and post request to show how you can customize the response you get. So yeah, that's basically it. If you have a question, you ask it in the chat and I'll make sure it gets answered later on. Yeah, Fred, I hope I have summarized it well. I have not.
You're
Yeah.
doing all right, but you missed the redirect middleware. Then you're just doing all right.
The Oh yeah, the role level middleware was for preventing access to a certain endpoint. Now we are doing the redirect middleware.
Yeah, I think we are also done with the redirect middleware unless anyone has a question. So my last middleware is going to be a caching middleware. And before I even see what the middleware is about, I'll like to define caching. Caching is let me just put this right there. Caching is, I think I'm getting bugs. Caching is when you want to cache your data. So let's say you are sending a request to a particular endpoint, and you have implemented caching backends like Redis. Does anyone have an idea of what caching is, or do you have an idea? I should just stop defining it.
Ooh, just pick a random person. That's always fun. The first name that pops on your screen.
Nyawagak. Nyawagak Gachan. Do you have an idea of what caching is?
It's okay. We actually don't mind the noise in the background as long as we can hear you, or if you don't want us to hear
Yeah.
that.
Maybe you repeat the question.
Oh, do you have an idea of what caching is?
Caching.
Yeah.
I think caching is maybe something to do with money. Or I don't know. I'm not sure, like
Cost.
the kind of caching. But I guess it's just maybe security when handling money or something like that.
So
Maybe
that's a good try.
Yeah, that's a good try.
Is there another person? Fred, you can take over. I've seen
Aye.
someone has written something in the comments. Oh, Faith is saying it caches a given response to the cache control headers. The cache middleware currently supports Cloudflare Workers project using custom domains and Dino projects using Dino 1.26. Hey Faith, you will just have to come and hear and teach us these things, because I think you have given us a very wide scope of what caching is.
Yeah. Let me just give an idea. What caching is let's say you have, let me give an Elif example. So we have a shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper realizes most customers tend to buy a lot of sugar, and because most customers tend to buy a lot of sugar, instead of putting the sugar far away from his reach, he can just place the sugar on the table, ile meza yao ya pale hivyo hapo kwa shop where they place their things. They can just place packaged sugar right there which is closer to them and also closer to the customer, instead of having it at the back in the other room behind her or him. And every time a customer orders for sugar, they have to go the back room and get some sugar. They just put it close to where they can just give it to the customer. So in an application logic, what caching is we realize, let's say, a particular endpoint. Let's say like a landing page that is data intensive. So say landing page for let me just say Safaricom. Let's say just say Safaricom. Assuming Safaricom, they had a landing page where everyone could just go and see Safaricom metrics. You could see how the APIs are performing today. API metrics are Daraja API. And assuming these metrics are not real time, because and everyone goes there, they check. Like also my scenario, I have these database here. You can a lot of data. Let's go to the table commodities. All this data here is like, this data does not change. This data does not change over time. So and every time someone sends a GET request to my application, I hope it doesn't gives me this under maintenance. Let me uncomment that. Let me just change it back to just put patch. So every time someone comes to my application, they want to see all this data. You see, looking at all this data, see, this is a very big data, and assuming everyone who comes and fetches data and every GET request, they get all this data all the time, every time. And remember, once you send a GET request, Django goes ahead and performs the SQL queries, runs the SQL queries through your DB, and then fetches all this data. Then the request passes through the middleware again and comes to you. So what you want to do is, because this data does not change, if I send this send request one more time, it doesn't change again. I send it one more time, it doesn't change. You also look at the time here, 10 microseconds. 9, you see the data does not change, but if you look at the time it takes to bring back the response to me, it's a very short time, given the fact that everything is running from my local machine. But assuming my application was hosted in somewhere like in India, in Ubuntu's AWS servers in India, and someone is fetching from Kenya, this time is also going to change. So what you want to do is have a cache. So that was my idea. I have a cache right here, a caching middleware, and say this cache is based on the Django backend cache. And what it does is any request to this endpoint, any request to a particular endpoint in my application is cached for at least 5 minutes. For at least 5 minutes, so that, let's say I sent this request one time, then another person comes in a different machine somewhere else, say not here, or maybe here or on a different laptop. They also send a GET request on the same endpoint, fetching the same data. You see, this is the same data they're fetching for every time. So what this caching middleware does is cache for at least 5 minutes. Okay, and the cache is stored in your memory instead of being stored in the database again. Once someone does a pull, so let's go through the code. So I create a cache key. So a cache key is like a unique identifier of your cache in the memory. So my cache is called view. The cache key is going to be view and the request path. Say I had like 100 different request paths. So the caches are going to be stored with this unique identifier, the cache key. And so at first I define the cache key, which is going to be the request path. So if somebody was fetching data from the agri-commodities, it's going to be the view followed by this. Then cached response. Cached response is going to be cache.get cache key. Once I do this gets the data which has been cached, the cached response. Then yeah, if the cache response is there, return the cache response. If the response is empty, it gets the data for the first time. Let's say this is the first time somebody is fetching that endpoint in 5 minutes. At the end of 5 minutes, this cache is going to be destroyed. So after 5 minutes, we need somebody to send the GET request so that I can store that data somewhere in the cache, so that the other people who are going to be interacting with my API for that 5-minute time span, they're going to be getting the data from the cache, but not from the database. I hope that makes sense. And I hope I've explained it perfectly. So yeah, that's what this does. So every time I'm sending this GET request, I'm gonna be getting this data. Also, somebody might ask, why didn't I use a longer time? Maybe 10 minutes, because my data is not changing. The reason why I used 5 minutes is, assuming this was a production application, and we don't offer real-time data. We just give you the data, but we also want you to also have as much as recent data as you can as an application user. Okay, have you ever also noticed, like, when you go to your M-Pesa application, sometimes you find your recent transaction is actually showing, and transactions from like 2 days ago are not showing up on your M-Pesa app, and you just wonder what's happening with Safaricom developers. I think they should use caching. But yeah, so why I didn't do this. I used 5 minutes. The reason I used 5 minutes is because I also want, after 5 minutes, if there's new data in my database, somebody has added to my database. Let's say my last commodity is ID number 10,001. Because there is caching, for that time span of 5 minutes, if you keep on sending requests for the 5 minutes, you will only get data that is up to that 5 minutes old as, I hope my English is fucked up. Data that is 5 minutes old since you sent your first request. But I want the user to get recent data also. After 5 minutes, I want the cache to be refreshed. I want, once somebody else hits that endpoint and 5 minutes are already over, I want that cache to be deleted and a new cache to be created with the same cache key. That's what this function does. It's a few lines, but it actually does a lot. Please explain more on the cache storage that is being used in your case. Okay. For this cache storage, Django uses your machine's memory, your local storage, your memory as the caching backend, but your memory, remember, your memory is also used by your application. So you don't want your application to be creating bottlenecks in your memory. It's fighting for the same thing. You might want to use other caching backends like Redis. There is many more out there. You could go do some research. But have worked with Redis. Yeah, man. I think that's it with the middlewares. I have nothing more unless anyone has questions.
There's another question in the chat thread. Paul is asking, could you update the cache as and when a new record is added so that it's always updated?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I said. After 5 minutes, once the cache is expired, because my cache is going to expire exactly at 300 seconds. After 300 seconds, the Django is going to time out that cache key and delete it. So after 5 minutes, that cache is going to be destroyed. So if there is new data in my database, once the cache is created, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, because I can see in your code that you physically request the cache at a particular URL or whatever.
Yeah.
Can't you also put that code within the area where you update the record? And that way, automatically, it'll update the cache immediately. It'll force a cache refresh at the time of updating a new record.
Oh yeah, I could do that. But I wouldn't do that in the middlewares, you see, because our scope is what you can do within your middleware.
Where would you put it then? At the point of updating the record?
I could put it in my we could put it in the database at your model levels, because that's where the recent data goes to first. You could put some signals right here in your models, database signals that you could use in hand with the caching method you're using to update your cache, to force the refresh, as you've said.
Could you put it in the save method?
Yeah, the save method. Also the update method, because the save is only happens when you're saving.
And the update when you amend the record.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
I'm expecting more questions, or anyone who wants a different implementation of a caching method we could do right now.
Okay. So just something that seems to be flying over my head. So in this caching middleware, does it apply for all endpoints, or could you sort of customize it for a particular endpoint?
For this middleware, it happens in all methods, all endpoints, right? I could just put it to we'll just say, if we just copy this up here, and instead of caching everything else, we'll just say, if request.path is that, then cache. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you could do it, if that applies to one view. But remember, there's also a disadvantage of actually doing all this we've done here at your middleware levels. Middle layers are good, but they are only good depending on your skills, and also on how you use them. So looking at all this, let's say for the RLS middleware, these are pretty shitty middleware to have in production. Because, as I said, all these middlewares run from top to bottom, right? From top to bottom. So every endpoint you hit in your database, all these middleware run. So if you have 20 middlewares, if I had 20 middlewares, all those middlewares will run before responding to a client, or also while you're receiving a response, receiving a request. So every time you receive a request, if you have many middlewares or one single middleware with a lot of computations, you remember you'll also be facing a lot of computational efforts on your computer memory. You will be putting a lot of strain in your memory, and also you'll be doing a lot of things before you even respond to a client. So let's say, if assuming like, look at all these middlewares I have, from up here to all here, these middlewares have just done everything even before. Let me open the views. Even before I start showing clients all this data here, you see how many this data is a very big response payload sending to a client. This is a very big payload sending to a client. Remember, you've had all these microseconds running, because every line in your code it takes time to run it. It also takes space, and the space, which is the memory. It takes time, space, and also memory space to run every line in your code. So for this, assuming you calculated this, the time taken to run this class, then the time taken to run this class, then this, you've also not taken into account this default Django middlewares. You see, the more middlewares you have, the also longer it's gonna take the double, because if it takes all this time to receive a request in your view, it's also gonna take that time to send back that request to the client. So if it took, assuming 1 microsecond for this logging middleware, and have 4 of them, so these are 4 microseconds plus these 6 more, those are 10 microseconds just for you before you receive the request in this view, right? Before the request hit your view. And not just this view, you might find not just this view, because for every view in your, even before any request hits this view or any other view, it takes 10 microseconds before it hits that view. Imagine that's just hitting your view and you've not even started responding to the client. So that's going to be 20 microseconds. This is just an assumption, 20 microseconds just that have been lost within your middlewares. So you should all find better ways to optimize your code, not just using middlewares. Have middlewares where they are absolutely necessary, and mostly use them for use globally defined middlewares, not middlewares that act on endpoints like my examples, but middlewares that work globally, like this middleware, the cache middleware that before we added the if request path, and also the logging middleware. These 2 middlewares work globally on your application. I think that summarizes it.
Yeah, it does. It also makes sense on what Paul was talking about, like a better place to implement just say the caching middleware in your views or in your database directly. So I think, I don't know, maybe we need we need a whole series on best practices for performance optimization in Django, so that we can continue learning these things. Yeah, so that was my question. I don't know if anyone else has a question before we wrap up. Today we've actually kept time. Any other question? All right, I think I'm just going to assume we have understood. Personally, I have. JR, do you have anything to tell us today? You've been quiet.
No,
This is new.
today I'm also noting things down. I'm also learning a lot.
Thank you so much thank you so much for last week. You really held down the fort when Jimmy wasn't available. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. Greg, I don't know if you have any new insights up to where we are now. Okay. So yeah, so I think that covers it for Fred. Sorry, AI Bunny. I think the reason we are quiet today is we normally ask so many questions, but to be honest, you have covered this very nicely. It was yeah, share the code. Yeah, we're gonna share the code. Helen, I don't know if we have the repo yet. Helen, are you here?
Hi, Rosalind.
It's Jimmy. Who's behind the Space Attack account or who's speaking? I'm
Hello.
using my phone, guys. I don't have lights. I'm using my phone.
Rosalind,
Hi.
Steven speaking.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so like this is my very first time attending this session, and it is quite insightful. And I'm also a Django enthusiast. So like my question is, like, these sessions, are they only just fixed on Fridays alone, or usually have other days like when you offer these sessions? Because I would love to be attending more of these to learn some more cool stuff like the one we've done today about middlewares.
All right. So first of all, welcome. We are glad you loved the session. Yeah, it only happens on Friday. Yeah, that's a fixed time, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Sometimes it drags to 11 p.m., but the standard time is 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. every Friday.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so maybe you could share your social media links so that you can also be getting in touch with you. Suppose maybe one has a question.
Definitely.
Ivani and Rosalie.
All right. I'm going to share the links right now. I'm going to share my Twitter handle and the Spacia Tech handle for anyone.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome. Hope to see more of you. Ivani, I was saying that we probably don't have questions because we have covered it so well. And yeah, I think that's it from me. Unless Helen has something to say.
I hope you can hear me. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you.
I also cannot hear you.
My network today decided I won't.
No, I'm just messing with you. Skia.
I guess we've had a great session today. Thank you, AI Bunny for the session that you've given us today. We hope to see you again. That
Definitely, man.
okay. So our next session will be on authentication and authorization. That is next Friday. I hope to see you all in the next session, and thank you all for joining. Rosalind.
Hey, Helen, what's the next session? Sorry. Yeah. We're going to announce the next session next week. Yes, you're audible, Helen. I was asking about the next session because we also need volunteer speakers. The usual, guys, you know how we normally do it. If you feel like you need to volunteer to give a talk, you're very much welcome. It's a very open community. It's okay if you don't have any experience or you don't think you have so much experience. You just come and we learn along the way. So I'm going to post about the next session because I have to look at some very big documents. I'm going to do that later.
Rosalind.
Yes.
It's on authentication and authorization.
Ah, nice.
That's our next.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Authentication and authorization. That's what we're gonna do next. So, guys, thank you so much for joining. I am going to assume we have nothing left. For the first time, we're releasing people early. Are these recorded sessions accessible? I'm gonna be honest, Keith, we have not been recording these sessions. Okay, we have been sort of freestyling and just coming to learn. And we don't have dedicated recordings because we're also figuring out the best structure for Django Labs. So until we do that, we are just going to be the one that is recorded now. I'm not sure if it's going to be accessible. Helen, where can people get this recording? Because I've never had to share recordings before.
I guess we'll just share. If we'll release the recording, we'll share.
Yeah, kindly bear with us, guys. We're trying to figure out the best structure in terms of how people are going to access the recordings. So for now, we are sort of freestyling through Django, and next we're going to do Django REST, and then maybe with the next, not maybe, definitely with the next session, or when we begin all over again for quote unquote a new cohort, we are going to have these recordings in place. So yeah, that's it for now. So unfortunately, if you miss them, you might not get the recordings. Yeah, any other question before we call it a night? Guys, today we are leaving at 10. This is so nice. Thank you. Yeah, yes, Kinoti.
First of all, thank you for this session. It was quite informative. Same to me, it's my second time to attend. Last week, part one I attended, and now this is my second time. I'm trying to catch up these things with Django. I've been using Fast API, so I was asking which is the best way for someone like me to catch up with this Django thing. I've never used Django before, so even the view, I'm just here in view. Like in Fast API, you don't have all these things, but some other things like the middlewares, I've interacted with them. Authentication, authorization, I've interacted with them, but now the Django structure, I don't know how it goes. Could you kindly advise us on where to begin so that it is the next session we are able to catch up with you?
Okay, so I am going to try to answer that, and maybe Fred, you can give your expert opinion on that. So in terms of catching up with this particular series of Django Labs, we started from running a Django project. We started from all the way from creating a Django project, creating a Django app, interacting with the models, and then we went ahead to we covered Django admin. We have covered forms and templates. So it's basically just glossing over important concepts. So the best way to catch up, I'd say, is the best way. This is actually not a classroom. We are not structuring it to sort of we have to all be aligned. It's okay for you to take us a little bit back if you don't understand anything. So the best way to catch up with this is probably just trying to build a small application. It's just even follow a tutorial. It could be something as simple as a blog, and then trying to implement some basic concepts like forms, templates, starting your app. Yeah. And then if you have any question, you can come here and we can answer your question. Yes, JR. JR, you had raised your hand.
Yeah, to add on that, Kinoti and anyone else wants to learn Django, you can get more resources on the Django site, and also W3 School. You can check their resources. They have awesome resources, by the way.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And yeah. Just try to if you're learning Django in general, again, documentation. You can just
Yeah.
go read the documentation as a storybook, but don't be discouraged, because then again, I'm trying to tell you, don't be scared if you're starting this whole thing and you seem like we are far ahead. The truth is some people are also just far behind. So just try like a small application, a very tiny thing, and then you'll build on your skills as you continue. Yeah. So any other question or a better way to help out? No? Okay. So we are going to take advantage of this day. Guys, this is rare. This day that we're leaving at 10 on the dot, because we don't know what's going to happen next week. We might be here till 12. So I want to thank AI Bunny a lot. You are such an amazing teacher. You didn't bring your slides, but it did not matter. We have grasped what you are teaching us. I'm now excited about using the logging middleware. Trust me, I'm going to try that. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. You're always such a good audience. Thank you for your questions, for engaging with us. And I have not sent my social media. Let me try and do that right now before I go. I'm just going to mute for a second and then running because I'm using my phone, run online.
Hi guys, I've shared my website's link on the chat. Anyone can reach out with any social link you find on there. Also, feel free to reach out to me personally. I'm ready to share and help. And the best way to learn anything as a developer is also always consult the official documentation. This is where you're gonna find the best information on what you're looking or trying to do.
Yes. Let me share that.
If you allow me, guys, I'll have to go make my supper.
Okay,
Getting
thank you
late.
so much. Thank you so much. We're also going to start eating as well, guys. Thank you. Have a lovely night. See you all next week. Bye.